Leo Carver wasn't the kind of man who noticed people. His world operated on data, deadlines, and deals sealed with a handshake that cost millions. He moved through life like a bullet train, fast, focused, and far too determined to stop for things like small talk or sentiment. But on a gray Tuesday afternoon, something broke his rhythm. He was walking out of the towering glass building that bore his name, Carver Tech, a symbol of everything he had fought for, built from the ground up with sleepless nights and ruthless decisions. His driver was waiting by the curb, the black SUV already purring with anticipation. The back door open, as always, without him ever needing to say a word. Everything in his life was like that. Predictable, controlled. But he didn't get in the car. He stopped. There, just to the right of the grand marble steps leading up to the main entrance, were two boys. They sat close together, shoulder to shoulder, the kind of closeness only shared by people who have never known separation. Twins, identical in every way. Messy blonde hair, oversized hand-me-down t-shirts, sneakers that looked like they'd been run into the ground months ago. Their faces were calm, but their eyes, those eyes, were doing the work of 1,000 words. Blue, piercing, and watching everything. No one else had noticed them. Hundreds of suits brushed past, noses in phones, minds in meetings. Security gave them wide eyes but no action. But Leo, he noticed, and for the first time in maybe a decade, he felt off script. Something tugged at him, deep in the chest, like an old song he couldn't remember but somehow still knew the melody to. He stood there, watching them. They didn't beg, didn't cry, didn't move. They just waited, like the world owed them something it had forgotten to deliver. And when the smaller of the two turned his head and looked directly at Leo, something inside him tilted. The boy's gaze was steady, knowing, familiar even. He couldn't place why, but it unsettled him. Leo approached, his shoes clicking against the stone steps. His shadow cast over them, and both boys looked up in unison. Neither flinched, neither smiled, but they looked like they had expected him. "You boys okay?" His voice came out sharper than he meant it to. Not harsh, but too clipped, too businesslike. He cleared his throat. "Are you waiting for someone?" The older twin, only by a little, Leo could tell, glanced at his brother, then back up. He nodded slowly. "Our mom. She left us here. Said she'd be back soon," the other added. His voice was soft, but steady. There was no fear in it, just fact. Leo felt something turn in his gut. How long ago? The twins exchanged a look again. Their faces didn't change, but it was clear they were communicating in that silent, sibling way. The older one finally shrugged. "A while." "Hours?" Leo asked. "Maybe," the younger said. "We stopped counting." Something about the way they spoke, the calmness, the resignation, made Leo frown. Kids this age should be laughing, running, asking endless questions, not sitting like statues on cold steps with eyes too old for their faces. He crouched down slowly, eye level now. "Do you have a phone number for her, or anyone else?" The older one shook his head. "No. She said not to talk to strangers." Leo gave a dry, almost bitter laugh. "Smart. But I'm guessing that rule has an exception when you've been left out here all day." There was a pause. The boys stared at him, then at each other again. The older one leaned forward slightly. "Are you Leo Carver?" That gave him pause. "Yes." "Why?" The younger twin leaned in now too. "We were supposed to wait for you." Leo blinked. "Me?" The older boy nodded. "She said if she didn't come back, you'd know what to do." A chill ran down Leo's spine. He rose to his full height, glancing around as if the mother might suddenly appear from the shadows and say it was all a joke, a test, a mistake. But no one came, just the endless shuffle of business people, the hum of traffic, and the soft wind curling between the city towers. "Come with me," he said, not sure if it was command or request. The twins stood without hesitation. He didn't put them in the back of the car alone. He sat with them, canceled his meetings, told his assistant to clear his entire afternoon, and when she asked why, he only said, "It's personal." At the penthouse suite he called home, glass, steel, and silence, he watched them eat like they hadn't had a real meal in days. They didn't make a mess. They didn't ask for more than they were given. They said thank you, polite, cautious, tired. He called in a private investigator that night. It didn't take long. Her name was Mara Jensen, former waitress, 2 addresses in the past year, single mother, no known relatives, financially unstable, no criminal record, but a history of short-term jobs and late rent payments. She checked into a nearby shelter 3 nights ago, checked out yesterday, disappeared. The investigator handed Leo a photo. He stared at it in silence. The woman was familiar, too familiar, not just from the report, from his past. He whispered her name under his breath. Mara. He hadn't heard it in over a decade. That night, Leo sat alone in his study, the lights off, city lights flickering beyond the glass wall. He sipped a drink he couldn't taste and stared at a photograph tucked in the back of an old drawer, one he hadn't touched in years. It was him, younger, smiling, with Mara Jensen beside him. He remembered her laugh, her stubbornness, her dreams, and he remembered the day she walked out of his life. No note, no closure. He had buried that part of his past deep, like everything else that hurt too much to keep close. He thought it was gone, finished. But now, 2 little boys with piercing blue eyes sat asleep in his guest room, and their presence was rewriting everything he thought he knew about the life he'd built. Leo stared at their photo on the investigator's tablet. Identical smiles, familiar cheekbones, eyes that matched his reflection every morning in the mirror. He didn't need a DNA test. He already knew. They were his sons, and everything was about to change. Leo barely slept that night. His body lay still in the king-sized bed, perfectly tailored sheets untouched on one side, but his mind ran miles in every direction. The soft hum of the city outside his windows, normally comforting, like a lullaby of control, felt distant and unreal. He kept replaying the image of those 2 boys, his boys. He got up before sunrise. It was still dark when he walked into the guest room. The twins were curled up next to each other on the bed, arms intertwined in a way that said they had never slept apart. There was a soft snore coming from one of them. The other stirred when Leo gently pulled the door open. The boy sat up groggily, his eyes locking onto Leo's almost immediately. There was no fear, just that same steady, quiet observation, a gaze that felt like it could see right through the armor Leo had spent a lifetime building. "You couldn't sleep?" the boy asked, surprising Leo with the simplicity of his tone. Leo stepped inside and leaned against the doorframe. "Neither could you, huh?" The boy shook his head, rubbing his eyes. "I had a dream about Mom." Leo felt something tighten in his chest. "Yeah. She said not to be scared. She said you take care of us." It was such a simple sentence, such a heavy one. Leo looked down, biting back the instinct to question or argue with the surreal logic of it. He just nodded. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "I'm Max," the boy replied, glancing at his still sleeping twin. "That's Micah." Max and Micah, Leo repeated. The names settled into his mind like puzzle pieces snapping into place. Max blinked at him. "Are you really our dad?" The question should have felt loaded, but Max asked it like he was reading from a list. Not hopeful, not accusatory, just needing clarity. Leo crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "I didn't know," he said truthfully. "Your mom and I, we knew each other a long time ago. Then she disappeared. I didn't even know she was pregnant." Max processed that without reaction. He looked at Micah, then back at Leo. She said she made mistakes. She said she was scared. Leo swallowed hard. She probably was. Max didn't press for more. Instead, he did something Leo didn't expect. He reached out and touched Leo's hand. It was quick, almost like testing the temperature of something dangerous. But he didn't pull away. "You don't seem scary," Max said. Leo smiled faintly. "I'm not. At least I don't try to be." The boy nodded, as if accepting that, and lay back down beside his brother. Within moments, Max drifted off again, as if simply having that conversation was enough to let him rest. Leo sat there for a long time. Later that morning, the twins explored the penthouse with wide-eyed wonder. Leo watched them from the corner of the room, amazed at how easily children adapted to new spaces. They inspected the marble floors, the enormous windows, the digital wall panels, and remote-controlled blinds. Micah pressed buttons until soft jazz filled the room. Max found a hallway lined with framed awards and asked why Leo had so many golden plaques. "They're just business awards," Leo said. Micah pointed at one of them. "Did you get that one for being a good dad?" Leo looked at it for a second, unsure whether to laugh or sigh. "No," he said. "I've never really been a dad before." The boys looked at each other again, the way they always did. Some unspoken signal passed between them, and Max said, "That's okay. We've never really had one before." It hit him harder than he expected. There was no resentment in their words, just truth, honesty from the mouths of two boys who had clearly had to grow up too fast. Later that day, Leo arranged for new clothes, food, a doctor's visit, and temporary guardianship papers, all handled with the same brisk efficiency he used to acquire companies. But this wasn't business. This was something else, something terrifying. And yet, exhilarating. By evening, they were playing a card game on the living room rug. The rules didn't make much sense to Leo, but he didn't care. Max kept score with impressive accuracy. Micah made up new rules halfway through. Leo lost every round, and the boys laughed each time. He realized then how long it had been since his penthouse echoed with laughter, how sterile everything had become, how quiet, how alone. After they went to bed, Leo found himself scrolling through old emails, old folders, looking for anything that might tell him why Mara had disappeared all those years ago. They had been young, yes, and their lives had been complicated. She had dreams of opening a cafe. He was already climbing the corporate ladder. But there had been love there. Real love. Until she vanished. The truth hit him like a wave. He had buried that pain under layers of ambition. Built skyscrapers over heartbreak. Became a titan of industry just to prove he didn't need anyone. But now, two small boys were living proof that what he lost had never truly left him. 3 days later, he got a call from the investigator. They found her. She was in a hospital, 3 towns over. Malnourished, exhausted, unconscious when found behind an abandoned gas station. Someone had called an ambulance after seeing her collapse. She had no ID on her, only a folded photo of Max and Micah in her jacket pocket. Leo didn't wait. He left the twins with his most trusted assistant, promised them he'd be back by morning, and took a private car to the hospital. She looked thinner, fragile, but it was her. Mara. Her face hadn't changed, not really. Her hair was shorter, her skin paler, but the spirit, the strength, was still there, even in rest. Leo sat beside her hospital bed, 1,000 emotions flooding his chest, none of them simple. Anger, sadness, confusion, relief. She woke up hours later. Her eyes found him almost instantly. "Leo," she whispered, voice cracked and dry. "I'm here," he said softly. She blinked slowly. "The boys. They're safe," he said. "With me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. Leo nodded. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her breath shook. I was scared. You were building your empire. You were already leaving me behind, Leo. I didn't think you'd want any of it. I didn't know what I wanted back then, he admitted. But if I'd known about them. She looked at him then, really looked. Would it have changed anything? He didn't answer right away. The truth was complicated. Maybe it would have. Maybe it wouldn't. But looking into her eyes now, after all this time, he only said what he felt. It changes everything now. She smiled through her tears. I'm sorry. So am I. They sat in silence for a while, years of distance folding into a single moment of understanding. Later, she asked, do they hate me? Leo shook his head. No. They're incredible. Smart. Brave. Just like you. She turned her face into the pillow and sobbed. And Leo, for the first time in years, reached out and held someone without hesitation. He didn't know what tomorrow would look like, or the next year. But he knew this, his life, once built on control and calculation, had just been rewritten. And somehow, it felt like he was finally becoming the man he was always meant to be. Leo returned to the penthouse just before sunrise, the soft gold of morning light brushing against the skyline like a painter testing a new palette. His driver didn't speak. He knew better. The silence gave Leo space to think, to breathe, to piece together the whirlwind of the last few days. In the back seat of the car, he sat still, hands clasped tightly, knuckles white. His heart was doing something it hadn't done in years. It was pulling in too many directions, toward Mara in that hospital bed, toward the boys asleep under his roof, toward a version of himself he barely recognized, one that wasn't measured in deals, profits, or prestige. The elevator ride up was quiet, but the moment the doors opened to his penthouse, noise poured in. Micah came running down the hallway barefoot, pajamas wrinkled, hair shooting in every direction like a firework had gone off on his head. You're back, he cried, throwing his arms around Leo's waist. Leo caught him instinctively, steadying the little frame that collided into him. It was so natural, so simple, and yet the feeling it sparked in Leo was overwhelming. Max was behind him, more composed but clearly relieved. Did you find her? He asked. His voice was calm, but his fingers were fidgeting at his sides. Leo crouched down, bringing himself to their eye level. Yes, I found her. She's okay. Tired, and she needs to rest, but she's safe. Micah clung tighter. Max's shoulders dropped in visible relief. Can we see her? Max asked. Not yet, Leo said gently. She's still healing. But soon. The boys nodded. Neither argued. That made his heart ache even more. How used to waiting they must be. How often they'd probably been told, not yet, or maybe later. He spent the morning with them, cooking breakfast, or at least trying. Leo had burned the eggs, undercooked the pancakes, and somehow spilled orange juice on the marble floor, but the twins thought it was hilarious. They ended up sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor, laughing over soggy cereal. He couldn't remember the last time laughter in his home wasn't coming from a movie or through the echoes of a corporate event. This was different. This was real. Later, while the boys were occupied with a pile of Lego bricks, Leo's assistant had panic ordered from a toy store. He stepped into his study and closed the door. He picked up the phone and called Murray's hospital. She was awake. The nurse said she'd asked about the boys. I want to bring them to her soon, Leo told the nurse, but I want to be sure she's stable. She's doing better, the nurse assured, but she'll need time, physically and emotionally. Leo nodded. Time. That was the one thing he never used to give freely. Now he was building his world around it. He hung up and stared out at the city. It looked the same as always, busy, endless, sharp. But it didn't feel the same anymore. Something inside of him had shifted. His phone buzzed with messages and missed calls. Board members, partners, journalists who had heard rumors that Leo Carver, the infamously untouchable CEO, had canceled 4 straight days of meetings without explanation. He ignored them all. Instead, he sat down at his desk and opened a drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a small leather notebook, one he hadn't opened since his late 20s. Back when he had still believed that building a future meant more than profits. Back when he used to scribble dreams into margins, not numbers. He flipped it open. There it was. Her name, Mara. And next to it, a list they'd made together. Buy a house with a garden. Name our first kid after my grandfather. Learn to cook more than toast. Never forget what matters most. He touched the page, his thumb resting over the last line. Never forget what matters most. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten. He picked up his pen. At the bottom of the list, he added one more line. Make up for lost time. That afternoon, he made a call to his legal team. He didn't want temporary guardianship anymore. He wanted full parental rights, shared with Mara if she wanted them. But solid, legal, real. I don't care how complicated it is, he told his lawyer. Just make it happen. He met with child therapists, pediatricians, and a private school that specialized in children transitioning from trauma. He hired a part-time tutor to start working with the boys at home, not because he believed in coddling them, but because he wanted to make sure they never felt lost or behind. He started learning how to be present, not just available, but engaged. That night, after brushing their teeth and reading a book that Micah insisted needed funny voices, Leo stood in the doorway of their room and just watched them sleep. It was still so surreal, but it felt right. He turned out the light and stepped back into the hallway. Max's voice caught him before he walked away. Are we gonna stay here? Leo turned. Do you want to? The boy nodded slowly. It's warm here. And it smells like pancakes, even if you're not great at them. Leo chuckled. I'm working on it. Max looked at him seriously. We don't need perfect. We just need someone who stays. Leo's heart clenched. I'm not going anywhere, he promised. Max smiled, rolled over, and pulled the blanket tighter. Leo stood there a moment longer, taking it all in. The soft rhythm of their breathing. The hum of city lights beyond the window. The quiet promise that life, however unexpected, was worth starting over for. In the days that followed, he took the twins to visit Mara. The reunion wasn't dramatic. It was soft, quiet, a room full of emotions that didn't need to be shouted to be understood. She cried when she saw them. They ran to her without hesitation. Leo stood back, giving them space, until she reached for his hand and didn't let go. For the first time in years, they were a family. A broken one, a healing one, a real one. And Leo knew this wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning. 3 weeks passed, and the world outside seemed to keep moving at its usual breakneck speed. But inside Leo Carver's world, everything had slowed down. Or rather, it had shifted. He still wore his suits, still checked in with his assistant, still fielded the occasional call from board members demanding explanations. But his focus wasn't the stock market anymore. It was Max's uneven handwriting, Micah's obsession with making spaghetti from scratch, Mara's slow, fragile return to the woman she once was. He found himself living in moments now, not milestones. Mara had been discharged from the hospital and was recovering in one of the guest suites at the penthouse. Leo had offered her the master bedroom, but she politely declined. It's too polished, she'd said with a soft smile. I don't want to sleep in a museum. That had made Leo laugh, really laugh, for the first time in what felt like years. She moved slowly, still weak, her voice sometimes barely above a whisper. But her presence lit something inside the boys, especially Micah, who clung to her like a shadow. Max, older in spirit, tried to act as though he was okay, but Leo noticed how often the boy checked to make sure she was still there, still real, still breathing. The nights were the hardest. One evening, Leo found Mara standing on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the city skyline. Her eyes were glossy, her arms hugging her chest. "They think I abandoned them," she said softly without turning. Leo walked up beside her. "They don't. I left them. For weeks. They were alone, hungry, cold." Her voice cracked on that last word. "They were scared," Leo admitted, "but they never doubted you. Not once." She looked at him then, really looked. "How do you know?" "Because they kept waiting for you." He exhaled. "Even before I told them you were alive, they believed it. Max said you'd come for them. He said you told him in a dream." Mara's lip trembled. "I didn't want this life for them. I didn't want them to grow up in fear. You were doing the best you could." She swallowed, and after a long pause, asked the question Leo knew had been eating at her. "Are they better off without me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, reached for her hand, and gently laced his fingers with hers. "They're better off with both of us," he said. The next day, he took a leave of absence from his own company, something no one thought he was capable of. The media had a field day. Headlines screamed, "Titan CEO steps away," for twins no one knew existed. Leo Carver's shocking new chapter, family over fortune. He didn't care. Let them talk. His assistant Marla visited one afternoon to drop off documents and updates, and she took one look at the crayons on the floor, the science experiment bubbling in a glass bowl on the kitchen island, and the spaghetti sauce stain on Leo's white shirt. And she just blinked. "Sir," she said cautiously, "you have glitter in your hair." Leo looked up from the volcano Micah had just erupted with vinegar and baking soda. "Do I?" "Bright pink," she said, pulling a post-it from her clipboard and dabbing at it like it was a classified emergency. He laughed again. A deep, real laugh that made Max poke his head in from the hallway. "What's funny?" Max asked, rubbing his eyes. "Glitter hair," Leo replied, and Max snorted. "You look like a unicorn CEO," the boy said. Marla just stared, then smiled. "You know," she said slowly, "I think this is the first time I've ever seen you happy." He didn't argue. She was right. But happiness didn't mean everything was easy. There were still challenges. Micah had night terrors. Some nights he would scream for his mother, clutching his pillow, trembling, unable to explain the monsters in his dreams. Max, on the other hand, became withdrawn. He was afraid of getting used to things, afraid it would all be taken away. Leo started sitting with them every night. No nanny, no assistant, just him, reading books, tucking them in, listening when they needed to talk. They started opening up slowly. Micah told him about the shelter they stayed in once, about the time they stole crackers from a grocery store because their mom was too sick to get up. Max talked less, but when he did, it was with a kind of wisdom that startled Leo. "Do you think we'll be okay now?" Max asked one evening, curled up beside him on the couch. "I do," Leo said. "But we'll all have to work at it." Max nodded. "I can work. I helped take care of Mom. I helped Micah. I can help here too." "You don't have to," Leo said. "You just get to be a kid now." Max was quiet for a long time. "I don't really know how to do that." Leo looked at him with a mixture of admiration and heartbreak. "That's okay. We'll learn together." With time, a rhythm formed. Mara started cooking again. Simple things at first, like soup and scrambled eggs, but the scent of her food filled the home in a way no catered meal ever had. Leo began learning the difference between bedtime and bedtime routine, a crucial distinction, apparently, that involved at least 3 different stories, water refills, and one more hug. One afternoon, the boys came home from the park with scraped knees and huge grins. Micah had climbed a tree too fast and fallen, but instead of crying, he beamed up at Leo with blood on his shin and said, "I'm brave like you." Leo knelt down and cleaned the cut carefully, heart pounding with pride and guilt and awe. "You're braver than me," he said. "I'm just trying to catch up." Later that week, Leo found himself at the dining table at 7 p.m., not at a board meeting, not closing a deal, but playing Uno with his kids and Mara, arguing over whether a +4 card could be stacked. Mara said yes. Leo said absolutely not. Micah cheated anyway. It wasn't the life he planned. It was better. Then came the letter. A plain envelope. No return address. Just Leo's name, handwritten. Inside was a note. From Mara's estranged sister, someone Leo hadn't known existed. She'd found out, through distant contacts, about Mara's hospitalization, and she wanted to meet the boys. She disappeared before the twins were even born, Mara told Leo, reading the note aloud. "We were never close. What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm scared." "I'll be there," Leo said. "Whatever you decide." It was strange. He had once built walls to keep people out. Now he was offering to hold the door open. A few days later, they agreed to meet at a small park just outside the city. Safe, public, neutral. When the day arrived, Mara looked nervous, the boys confused. Leo drove, one hand on the steering wheel, the other occasionally reaching back to steady a juice box or calm a question. As they pulled into the parking lot, a woman was already standing near the bench. Her face bore a faint resemblance to Mara's, though the years had drawn deeper lines between them. She held a worn handbag and clutched it like a shield. Max and Micah watched silently as Mara stepped out of the car, Leo beside her. There were no hugs, no tears, just a quiet hello and a long pause. Leo kept the boys close, watching, waiting, ready to protect, but also hoping for something else. Healing. It was too early to tell what kind of reunion this would be. But even in the uncertainty, Leo understood something vital. Family isn't defined by perfection. It's defined by who shows up when everything else falls apart. And for the first time, he wasn't standing on the outside of someone else's story. He was in it, right where he belonged. The leaves had just started to turn amber and gold, catching the light as if the world itself had decided to soften. Autumn in the city was quieter, less chaos, more reflection. It had been over a month since Leo Carver had brought Max and Micah into his life, and yet he still found himself stunned by how easily they had changed everything. Not by force, not by demand, but by presence. Their laughter had filled corners of his penthouse that used to echo. Their drawings lined the walls of his once sterile home office. Their shoes, muddy and mismatched, sat beside his polished leather ones at the front door. Nothing was untouched anymore. And for once, Leo liked it that way. Mara's recovery had reached a turning point. Her strength was returning, not just in her body, but in her eyes. She had started venturing out alone again, walking a few blocks to the cafe down the street, browsing books in the local store, sometimes even picking up the boys from school without needing Leo by her side. But with strength came emotion. And with emotion, truth. One quiet night, after the twins had finally surrendered to sleep, Mara sat across from Leo on the couch, her fingers cradling a cup of peppermint tea. She stared into the steam as if it could rearrange her thoughts for her. "There's something I haven't told you," she said. Leo looked up from his laptop, instinctively closing it. "Okay. I didn't come back here just because I was sick, or because I had no one else. I came because I wanted you to know." He waited. No interruptions. No pressure. "I lied when I told you I didn't know who the father was." Leo's heart stalled. It wasn't the words themselves, but the weight behind them. "You knew it was me." Mara nodded slowly. "I always knew. I just didn't think you'd care. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I thought, why bring them into a world where they'd always feel unwanted by half of it?" Leo stood, pacing the room now, his hands on his hips. Not in anger, but in stunned realization. "All this time, I could have been there," he said. I know. And I'm sorry, Maura whispered. But when I saw your name in the papers, climbing higher and higher, building this empire, I didn't think you'd even remember me, much less take on this kind of responsibility. Leo turned to her, his voice quiet. I didn't remember you because I didn't let myself. That night we met, it was a blur. Fast, fleeting. But it stuck with me. For years, I just buried it. Like I buried a lot of things. There was a long silence between them. Not hostile, just heavy. Then finally, Leo sat down beside her again. I can't get back the time I lost, he said, but I won't lose another second. She nodded. I believe you. The next few weeks became a strange blend of ordinary life and subtle transformation. Leo had begun attending Max's school presentations, sitting in miniature plastic chairs and applauding enthusiastically as Max recited his poem about things I love, which surprisingly included broccoli, space, and Leo. Micah, meanwhile, had become obsessed with building things. Leo ordered him a massive Legio architecture set and watched, awed, as Micah, without help, built an entire replica of a skyscraper over the course of a weekend. I'm gonna be a builder like you, he told Leo proudly. You already are, Leo replied. But beneath the laughter and the family dinners, something else stirred. Leo began receiving messages, anonymous ones. They started as emails to his corporate address, then to his personal phone. Then, once, even a note slipped under the door of his building. They all said variations of the same thing. He doesn't deserve them. She lied. What else hasn't she told you? You're not a father. You're a paycheck. At first, Leo brushed them off. Bitter strangers, jealous ex-employees, maybe even press bait. But when a letter arrived with photos, old ones, of Mara, with another man, his faith started to tremble. He showed the letter to Mara that night, setting it gently on the kitchen counter. Her face went pale. Where did you get this? It was delivered. No name. Just this. She picked up the photo and swallowed hard. His name was Colin. He helped me for a while. After the boys were born, I stayed in his apartment for 2 months. But it was never like that. Then why do these look like? Leo stopped himself. He didn't want to accuse. But it hurt. The idea that there might still be something, someone, between them. Mara looked up at him. Her voice was firm. You're their father, Leo. I never doubted it. Colin was kind, but he wasn't family. Leo wanted to believe her, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it started to grow in the cracks of his otherwise steady heart. He ordered a paternity test. He didn't tell anyone, not even Maura. He hated himself for it. But he needed certainty. The results came in a plain envelope. Sealed. Unmarked. Leo sat on the edge of his bed, staring at it for a full 10 minutes before opening it. 99.9% probability. They were his sons. His. Tears stung his eyes. He didn't even know they were there until one dropped onto the paper. Not out of relief. Not out of triumph. But out of shame. He had doubted them. He had doubted her. After everything. That night, he walked into the boys' room and stood between their twin beds, watching their peaceful faces in the soft nightlight glow. Micah stirred. Dad? He mumbled. Yeah, buddy. Will you stay until I fall asleep? Leo sat down on the edge of his bed. I'll stay all night. He meant it. The next morning, he confessed everything to Mara. She was quiet at first. Not angry. Not shocked. Just sad. I get it, she finally said. But I wish you'd come to me. I wish you'd trusted me. I'm learning, Leo whispered. Slowly. But I am. She reached for his hand. We all are. And just like that, the crack began to close. Not perfectly, but enough to hold. The family they were building was not flawless. It was messy, complicated, layered with mistakes and forgiveness. But it was real. Leo had once believed power meant control, but now he was beginning to understand the truth. Real power was presence. It was honesty. It was the courage to stay, even when the past tried to pull you away. He didn't know what the future held. But he knew this. Whatever it was, he wouldn't face it alone. Winter settled over the city like a quiet hush, softening its sharp edges and slowing the world just enough to make people notice each other again. Snow clung to the ledges of towering buildings, and the streets shimmered under the amber glow of streetlights. Inside Leo Carver's penthouse, warmth and life pulsed through every room. It smelled like cinnamon, pine, and something deeper, belonging. Christmas was 2 weeks away, and for the first time in his adult life, Leo wasn't spending the holidays in a 5-star resort or buried under work. He was home, with his sons, with Mara, with laughter echoing down the hallway, and little socks mysteriously vanishing in the laundry, and drawings taped over spreadsheets on his office wall. The transformation wasn't dramatic. It had been slow, almost imperceptible, but it was absolute. Leo had always been the man who controlled every minute of his day, who scheduled phone calls down to the second and managed billion-dollar decisions without blinking. But lately, he was the man who stopped to help with homework, who learned the difference between T-Rex and Velociraptor because Max insisted, who stayed up late watching documentaries on bridges just to understand Micah's newest obsession. He had become someone he didn't recognize, and he liked him. Mara had grown into herself again, piece by piece. Her health had stabilized, and her spirit had deepened. She was no longer the fragile woman who had walked back into Leo's life. She was stronger now, sharper, but also more open. There was a kind of peace in her eyes that hadn't been there before, an anchor after the storm. Yet even as the days grew softer, something unspoken lingered beneath the surface. Mara could feel it. Leo could too. It was the sense that their story wasn't quite done unraveling yet. It began on a Sunday afternoon, when the 4 of them were decorating the Christmas tree. Micah had just placed a crooked paper star on top, held together with too much glue and too much love, and Leo had stepped back to take a photo, smiling to himself. Then his phone buzzed. One message. No name, just a number he didn't recognize. You should ask Mara why she really left, not just what she told you. Leo's face hardened, the warmth of the moment fading. Not again. Not more secrets. But he didn't say anything. Not yet. The next night, after the twins had gone to bed, Leo brought it up. I got another message, he said, sliding his phone across the kitchen counter. Mara looked at the screen, her face unreadable. I thought it was over, he said quietly. It's not who you think, she replied. Leo waited. She exhaled. When I left after that night we met, I wasn't just running from the past. I was running from danger. Leo blinked. What do you mean? I was involved with someone before you, a man named Victor. At first, he seemed kind, stable. He helped me when I had no one. But when I told him I was leaving, he changed, threatened me, followed me. I went into hiding, Leo. That's why I moved constantly. That's why I never reached out. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Because I was afraid you'd think I was dragging you into something you didn't sign up for. I wanted to protect the boys, and I wanted to protect you. Leo stared at her, heart pounding. Not out of fear, but fury, that someone had stalked her, hurt her, threatened their son's safety. And worse, that she'd felt she had to keep it all inside. Do you think it's him sending the messages? He asked. I don't know, she admitted. But I've been feeling watched again lately. Subtle things, a car parked outside too long. A man standing at the end of the grocery aisle pretending to look at magazines. Leo stood up. We're going to the police. I already did, but without proof. Leo didn't wait. The next day, he called in every resource he had. Private investigators, cybersecurity experts, legal teams. He wasn't just a father or a partner anymore. He was a protector, and no one, No one was going to threaten what he had fought so hard to build. Within a week, the pieces began to fall into place. Victor was living under a different name in another city, but he had been in contact with people from Mara's past. People who wanted leverage over Leo, people who saw an opportunity in his new vulnerability. What started as harassment had the potential to become extortion. But Leo didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in. Using his connections and influence, Leo ensured that the man would be investigated, watched, and ultimately exposed. There would be no room for fear in their lives anymore. He was done letting the past dictate their future. On Christmas Eve, the final piece arrived, not as a threat, but as a resolution. A letter from Victor's legal counsel. A restraining order had been issued. The investigation had led to other cases. He was being held for questioning in relation to separate charges. The danger was gone, at least for now. Leo held Mara's hand as they read the letter together. "It's over," she whispered. "No," Leo said softly. "It's just beginning." That night, as snow fell gently outside, they sat around the fireplace with Max and Micah curled up on either side. The tree lights blinked softly, and the room glowed with more than warmth. It glowed with hope. Max looked up at Leo suddenly. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah? Do you think things had to be hard first, so they could be this good now?" Leo smiled, ruffled his hair. "Maybe. Or maybe we just had to find each other when we were ready." Micah yawned. "Are we gonna stay here forever?" Leo looked at Mara, who nodded with a smile. "Yes," Leo said. "Forever sounds about right." And as the night grew deeper, and the fireplace crackled, and the world outside fell asleep under a blanket of snow, Leo Carver closed his eyes with his family beside him and felt, for the first time in his life, whole. No more running, no more doubt, just love. Unshaken, undeniable, unbreakable. The kind of love that wasn't earned by perfection, but forged through pain, truth, and the unwavering choice to stay. Every day. No matter what. Forever.